Hello and welcome to episode 1, Her Finance Talk. My name's Sue Diamond and I'm your host, and our goal is to help women create a better relationship with their money so you can live your best life. So thanks for joining us and investing in your financial well-being. The Her Finance Talk is brought to you by the Her Finance Club, and our mission is to socialise the idea that it's okay for women to talk about money, because knowledge is power, and when that knowledge helps you become more independent, it translates to empowerment. So women empowering women is a mantra that we love to live by, and one that has helped inspire women for decades. So where would we be without each other? So let me welcome our guest today, Katie Wilson, wealth advisor and founder of Nourish Wealth Management. So I'll just give you a little introduction here, Katie, and then we'll dive right in. So for nearly 15 years, Katie has empowered her clients to pursue their personal and professional goals. So she works diligently as a partner for her clients in collaboration with other professionals, such as your tax advisor and estate planning attorney, to organize and evaluate the foundation for a sustainable lifestyle that drives success for her clients' objectives. Katie describes herself as an entrepreneur, a daydreamer, a financial planner. She's passionate about mothering, nature, meaningful relationships, comfortable spaces, and of course, personal finance. And she's also invested in socially responsible investing. So while she believes in maintaining full-time dedication to her work, you can also find her committed to fun and exploration with her 2 young daughters in the Catskills and New England. And she also volunteers for charitable organizations like Riverkeeper and supporting the work of domestic violence advocacy and sustainable business. So welcome, Katie. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So I'd love to open the conversation up just by having you maybe expand. I did a very brief overview of your introduction there. So if you want to share a little bit more about your story for our listeners and maybe how you transitioned into becoming an entrepreneur and founding Nourish Wealth Management.
Yeah. So whenever I'm asked this question, it starts back in college. And I was fortunate enough, my senior year of my undergrad program, which was really the first year of my graduate work. So I did a 5-year MBA program and majored in finance and left with an MBA as well. So in that 4th year of school, I was able to tour a financial planning practice in the town of Waterville, Maine, where I went to college, Thomas College. And I realized that it was something that I would want to do. And so I tried to seek out an advisor to work for, and nobody wanted to hire me because I didn't have any skills, no license. And so I just kept knocking on doors and found a friend of a friend who was a family of a friend, rather, who let me in to peek around. And I've been doing this ever since. So that was in 2006, and here we are today. I moved from Maine, where my first experience was with a representative, down to the Hudson Valley of New York, and I sought out an independent financial advisor to work for. Started working part-time, that turned to full-time. I became an advisor, started my work on a CFP designation, and still working through that. And in 2017, I launched my own firm, Nourish Wealth Management. And at that time, I had a 2-year-old and 4-year-old daughters. Wow. And Nourish became the brand because I felt very strongly that I didn't have to give up business for motherhood or vice versa. So I encourage that along with other dreams for all clients and all women in my life.
Right. I think sometimes as women, we have a tendency to hold back, right? Mm-hmm. And I again, a lot of women that I talk to talk about how they would love to follow their dreams and create their own business, but that kind of little self-imposter voice or our inner critic often holds them back from taking kind of that leap or plunge to move forward. So what, motivated you to do that?
Yeah. Well, there are so many answers. But I look back now, still 4 years later, and wonder how I had the courage to do it. Like there was some really tough stuff involved. But I think really just trying to network and pull in the right resources, understand what's out there to help you launch is important. And financially is a big deal too. So you have to be able to cover your base expenses. And I see, we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, but through the pandemic, it's so important for women to be focusing on taking care of themselves so that they can buy themselves future options, future lifestyle and business options. So that means, maintaining frugality where necessary, but also where you can. And for me, that meant, seeking financing options and talking to several people who weren't interested before being able to actually find financing through the broker dealer that I'm affiliated with. And so that worked out quite well in the end for me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because of course we both know right now women are bearing the greater economic burden following 2020, and of course we're still dealing with COVID. Depending on where you are, numbers are still rising. So women are dealing with, I guess, losing their jobs, being furloughed still, and on the other side to that, returning to work is statistically much more difficult for women because we carry all these other burdens in terms of taking care of our families, whether it be our children or aging parents. So I think that's helpful, the information you shared, because I think a lot of women are looking at, how am I going to pivot as I move forward? But can you just share with our listeners, because obviously you dealt with, you're a mother, you have 2 young children, you were dealing with education at home, you were managing a business, and how did you cope?
Yeah. Well, some nights were not pretty. And I'll tell you that on top of that, I had the headwinds of divorce, selling a property, fortunately being able to move on to a new property with a rental in between, a special needs daughter. So these are things that I find are not uncommon. We all have unique challenges in our lives. Some of us are more willing to talk about it and be more vulnerable about it. But I think that the primary source of support for me was, a couple of very close friendships, and family, although they're out of state. So I have no immediate family, within the area that could help with childcare or even, direct emotional support. We're all very much alone during the pandemic. But I think it's really critical to maintain relationships with, those folks that you trust that have been by your side for a while, and to keep that positive, cry it out, do what you got to do, seek therapy. I've done all of that. And then, pick your head up each day, know that you're doing the best, and find better ways to do what you're doing that help you lead a full life. Because why should any of us as women or people limit ourselves because of the voice in our head, or because life feels hard? It's always going to feel hard. And there's a huge amount of injustice out there in the world as well. And so we can't fight that without the support of people in our ear telling us we can.
Right. Yeah, myself, I pivoted earlier this year, and I'd been thinking about it for a couple of months, but when you're in a position and you have that monthly salary, and then it's like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do if that's not consistent, because there's always ebbs and flows when you have a business. But I feel I made the right choice to transition, and I encourage everybody to follow their passion, but to take the leap when they're ready, because I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's that we need to have an emergency fund. I used to say 3 to 6 months. Now I say 6 to 9 months. So it certainly taught us that one thing. But can you share some tips in regards to what might be helpful. I know we had tried to take a step back. I mean, you're very passionate about supporting women and being an advocate of women who are on the receiving end of domestic violence. So when we talk about solutions, I know some of them, it all depends on where you are right now as to what works best for you. But maybe you could just throw a few ideas out there.
You know, domestic violence is a very sensitive and unique situation that deserves its own conversation. Yeah. And oftentimes victims of domestic violence don't have jobs or income. So they don't have the advantage of some of the, foundation pieces of the tips that I may offer. So I'll table that for a moment, but for folks that do have, transparency at home among their finances, this should be like part of our vows, right? Like, I will be transparent about my financial situation, because the lawyers do it for you on the back end if you don't in the beginning, or they try to. It's just, we talk about the gender pay gap and, just relationships are like, how, when we do this at home, that's how we're really doing it. Are we having these discussions? Are we being honest with ourselves about our spending habits? And I think that it's really, really important that we start with those open discussions. The very first thing we should be thinking about is saving, right? So what percentage of our income makes sense to save? Go ahead and Google about it if you want. Talk to somebody who's skilled, who can help you understand where your resources should go, in which order as well is important. Should we be, it's not a one size fit all. That's not how I'm trained. But we should absolutely have an emergency fund before we think about replacing a vehicle or buying extra toys. That's going to help us not only in a pandemic, but it's there for a reason, always. So we don't want to get greedy about extra returns. Is the bucket that, you want to be paying down debt before emergency savings? How can we get an emergency savings if you're paying 30% credit card interest? And that's not the bulk of my work, but we want to be really careful because those credit offers are everywhere and we shouldn't be afraid of leverage. But we need to know how to do that and access that as new business owners or going into business. I had an advisor friend once tell me that she would never have stayed married if she didn't charge a housekeeper. So there's going to be some concessions we make, but hopefully we're making those with our partner. That might be hard to do during a pandemic, of course, where we're not allowing folks into our homes. But, I think that the most basic answer is transparency and awareness, and keep checking in on things. I check my bank account a couple times a week.
Right.
My financial plan is run, a couple times a year. So we have to stay in tune.
Yeah. I think it's, when we go back, you mentioned about spending habits, and it's, I think for me, that's always kind of the crux of the situation. Yeah. So you have to understand how you value money and how you spend it in order for you to be able to move forward. And I think as I speak through Her Finance Club, and we encourage women to talk candidly about money, because how can we increase our knowledge and build our confidence around it if we're not inherently talking about it? So talking to your spouse, I can't tell you how many women I come across and they don't have. So we talk about your money personality or your money beliefs. They can be called a couple of different things, or your money mindset. And so not only do they not kind of dig deep and understand, how they value money, but they don't have a discussion with their partner. And of course, we know it's really challenging just kind of getting a handle on your own money story, let alone then you bring somebody else into the relationship, and everybody's money story is unique, right? Yeah. There's no two the same. So it's so important that you're kind of on the same page. So yeah, it's like, talk to your spouse. I mean, I encourage people, I'd say, have a money date. And people are like, what do
Right.
you mean a money date? And it's like, well, just, set up a night where you can sit down and you can even start
Yeah.
just talking about your dreams and your interests as a basis. And then you can start taking the step back. Well, okay, let's take a look at where are
Yeah.
we spending our money? And
Yeah.
like you'd say, what credit cards am I using? And
Yeah.
what's the interest rate on that? And just as an FYI, I think, and again, out of COVID, like savings has gone up because they were saying the last downturn, I think it was at 8%, and they're saying now it's at 20%. So I think now more than ever, there is an understanding that people need to save. So
Yeah, certainly. There's I want to not miss the opportunity to say that we are privileged people who did not lose our jobs or chose to start it over and are able to make
right,
our expense commitments. Not everyone has that opportunity. There is still unemployment. There will forever be unemployment, mismatch of skill set, special situations. But for those of us that do have, discretionary income at the end of the month, it's so important. The communication is like the foundation for everything, for all success, right? And planning. And so my favorite date with my ex-husband was we had margaritas. So if you can responsibly do that, go out to dinner, leave kids with a babysitter. That's an approved expense to go over your budget. And we used to do that kind of quarterly, and it was the only way we could really keep things in check. And how quickly we can get off track if we're not doing that often. And shameless plug, I suppose, but like a partner, a financial partner can help you develop that. The very one of the first 3 steps I take with clients before investing money, before providing them a financial plan, while they're still gathering the list of information that I need from them, that's very extensive, is developing a family mission statement. So what is important to you? On education, sure. What level of education do you want to provide your children, if any, or will they be self-funding? What do you do every day? What does your schedule look like? Where are you actually spending your money versus where you say you want to be spending them? And is there a mismatch, and how do you reposition that?
Right. Yeah. This is key because, again, people I hear sometimes saying, well, I don't, worry about money, or I don't think about money. It's not important to me. And it's like, well, money is the base. It's a tool for us to achieve, what's valuable and what's most important to us. So yes, it's not the money that's important, but it's the tool that's going to help us achieve our best life, right? So it really is important for us to take a look at, it impacts all aspects of our life, right?
That's right, now and in the future. So if you can just know you're doing enough, if you can check in and say, what do we need for our future? And do that while you're young. I just had a conversation with my sister who's just turned 30, and she's been, at my suggestion, putting away 10% of her income consistently. And this is someone who doesn't live in a wealthy area. And I've spoken to others in wealthy areas who are not doing the same. And you want to end with a buffer. You don't want to end dying broke. I mean, you want to have problems you can plan around. And so start the savings, automate it. Do that now. If you're 45 and you've yet to get started, talk to somebody and commit to it. And stop planning vacations before you pay attention to what is driving your entire family, that wallet. And learn just how you might be able to benefit from, can you live a different lifestyle? Can you actually afford the things you're telling yourself not to? Can you afford to go into business? This is designing your life. That's what a financial plan is. It's not telling you how off the mark you are. It's helping you design both right now what works in alignment with your family mission and your own personal values, and what will help you succeed for your future desires, which evolve, by the way.
Right. And it's so important for me with Her Finance Club, the focus is women, because as we both know, we have unique obstacles that face us. And as you'd mentioned earlier, the most obvious one, the gender pay gap. But, we live longer, divorce hits us harder. There is a whole slew of things. So for women, again, it's really, we have to start looking at this because we don't want to be, I think statistics are showing 80% of women could potentially end up as a bag lady on the street, just based on statistics right now. So it's so important. And, not just for you, but for your family, because we're the community caretakers,
Right.
It's like we're the strength behind everybody else. So we need to, I always like to use that analogy, make sure you put your oxygen mask on first.
Right.
And then you're going to be in a position to help everybody else, not trying to help everybody else before you put the mask on. So
that's right.
Okay.
So do that and automate it, figure it out. What is it? It's a session. It's a dream session, and you can use any number of outlets to try to articulate what it is you need your current life and your future to look like, or you desire to look like. And then start to automate some amount. I talked to a client just yesterday, and they want to retire as soon as possible, but I'm not comfortable. It could work, but I'm just not comfortable with where we're at. So I said, what could you do to maximize this particular account? Well, maybe I could. Well, did you go back to how much you're spending every month? It's really just as basic as that. It's checking in. And either you have it or you don't. And then you have a discussion, and you can only find solutions for yourself once you've uncovered those details.
Right. Yeah. It's always like, I always say, kind of prayer is not a plan and hope is not a strategy, right? It's like, if we decide we want to drive somewhere that we've never been before, then, I'm going to use my GPS, and I'll probably have a map as well, because I'm always thinking, well, what if the GPS doesn't work properly or something? So we know that, if we only have a certain amount of time, that we're making allowances to get there on time and take into consideration, on the way, is there an accident or a roadblock or whatever? And it's the same thing when we come to with our financial planning.
That's right. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to that. Knowledge is power, and with that, create your plan that gives you peace of mind, and that allows you to just focus on what matters.
Right. And so I just wanted, I know we're coming, we only have a few more minutes, but I just wanted to go back to you mentioning about automation. So for me, that's a huge opportunity for people to achieve financial success. And I know for myself, coming from a spender's brain, because I do like to buy things, that automation for me personally has been a saving grace. So, and my husband and I have done it, in a variety of ways, but the number one, like the emergency fund. So if it's going directly in there, if I'm not touching it, or it's not coming into my hands, and the same with, your retirement funds, and then, we have like a reserve and then a savings, but that's helped, and that's what's been key for us. And this is somebody who does tend to kind of go on the spending side with the brain. So I think that's kind of key for everybody, because, if we take a look and take a step back, there's always somewhere that we can make a savings, because we know that we do spend money on needs. It's not on wants. It's not all needs, right?
Right. Yeah. So automating is, again, understanding like what your resources are. So you've got to go to that fundamental exercise of what comes in and what goes out. And there's a free Google Doc or worksheet template, and there's also an Excel template if you want something that's not an app and not to get committed to that. So you can kind of document what you have and where, before or after, if you're spending money on expensive supplements, which is an indulgence of mine for me and my children, I know that there's some area that I can put money away to a Roth IRA if I qualified, right? To a personal IRA outside of a retirement plan. Those those are details you'll want to seek some advice or do additional research for, like what is the right place to put this, and what is the order of placement for my resources, for my income. But absolutely, if you can set it up to be however many $100 it is a month that you can afford to put away, do that and keep it simple. It's gone, it's part of the plan, it's out of there. Versus I see so many times, oh, well, we'll put that off. Even some clients that I send reminders for, we'll make that before tax filing deadline. Oh, but then something else comes up and okay, so we missed the mail and then you didn't get your contribution in. And, these are today there are so many tools for automation. Right. Working with an advisor, working on your own, even saving at the bank. There are just so many ways to set this up. So absolutely, taking a look at, savings as automation, but also lifestyle wise too, like how can we spend our money to save our time? Because as entrepreneurs and women who are managing children and relationships and businesses, how can we take advantage of some of those services too? So like maybe housekeeping opens up for us again now. Perhaps we can, I subscribe to meal kits to see if that was helpful to take some of the planning off the table. My girlfriend got me this beautiful, simple, I say beautiful because it's helped so much, just a little checklist, a little notebook that I start my coffee with, and for personal, like what are my top priorities today personally and my top priorities professionally. I have millions of tasks that never go away. What do I need to focus on today? And so, the habits, forming good habits around not just time, but energy management. And, part of going back to what's important to you, if you need to manage your energy as a woman and entrepreneur, are you exercising? What are you doing? What are you putting in your mouth? Like these are real basic things that keep our body as a machine moving and keep us well. Goes back to creating Nourish. So those are maybe some extra things you can do. Instacart has been huge throughout a pandemic. I was so resistant because I wanted control for so long. But once I started implementing these things personally, and also on the professional side, hiring a virtual administrative assistant was a big win for me in the past couple of months.
Yeah,
and so, so being able to delegate and know that that's freed you up is so huge. And then also Calendly, a schedule, or can that be helpful for you? And many other ways that I have not yet implemented myself. But what I do know is that where I can take decisions and the time that it makes to take decisions off the table, then I can get to what's important more quickly and overall, hit more of my targets.
Right. No, those are great tips. Thank you for sharing that. I know myself that I have, since COVID, become very considerate. Well, I do it every day now, not always at the weekend, but I do meditation. So I start my day out with a 5-minute meditation because I know I can take 5 minutes to do this, and it helps me focus and get me targeted for the day. So I know that makes a big difference with me, and I'd like to do the journal as well.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately our time is up. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story and your knowledge and some of the tips for our listeners. That's been really helpful. Just to let our listeners know that we will have you linked in our narrative. So if you want to reach out to Katie, you can connect with her in the narrative link. So thanks again. And I just wanted to kind of heighten our listeners' awareness because we're still in April, and you might be surprised to learn that April is Financial Literacy Month. And this is a great reminder to take a few small steps to help improve your financial health so you can make better money decisions. So in celebration of Financial Literacy Month, the Her Finance Club is sharing a financial self-care guide on how healthy financial self-care habits can keep you feeling positive and encouraged. So you can download the free cheat sheet in the narrative. And again, just wanted to take time to remind everyone the Her Finance Talk is brought to you by the Her Finance Club, and our goal is to get 1 million women to start the money conversation with your spouse, your friends, or your colleagues, because as we have mentioned during this broadcast, Knowledge is power. And when that knowledge helps you become
right.
more independent, it translates to empowerment. So thank you, Katie, and thank you to our listeners. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay, bye.